LTD P6 Town Car. Yes, that was an absolute mouthful, but wait till you see this vehicle that blends English styling and American flair and was sold in Australia. Now, what was the genesis of this Ford LTD P6 Town Car? Well, in 1973, Ford Australia began building Fairlane-based LTDs, and previous to that, they had really sourced U.S. cars in the event that somebody wanted a large vehicle, with some exceptions, of course. But by this point in 1976, Ford Australia was churning out a number of large full-size cars and selling them relatively successfully in the local marketplace. This P6 LTD was introduced in the fall of 1976, and it was based upon the ZH Ford Fairlane that you can see here with a lot of typical Ford styling cues, probably even from a few years earlier. Think about a 1974 Ford LTD in the U.S. as an example seen here, and now look at the Ford Fairlane ZH, and you can see the front end looks pretty similar. The hood has that kind of prow in the middle of it, and the front section, the header panel, has a similar bulge, very similar to the US LTD as I mentioned previously. You also have kind of the typical Ford styling, flat fenders, and fill the box, if you want to call it styling. In other words, very square, slab-sided overall surfacing. And that was just typical of Ford in the U.S., and I guess that styling philosophy also translated to Australia. I will say the bumper guards on this ZH Fairlane do remind me of those on the AMC Ambassador with their kind of pointiness. But, well, let me know if you agree or disagree with that. In any case, the Ford LTD P6, as I mentioned, was based on this ZH Fairlane, but it was a whole nother level of tacky styling. And I actually like the ZH Fairlane styling a little bit. But the Ford LTD P6 is, well, just not my cup of tea. But it's clear what the inspiration was. No, it wasn't the Chrysler Cordoba, which you can definitely see in the front end of the styling in this picture here. Remember, though, that the Cordoba was actually based on Jaguar styling, for those who are English. And take a look here at a Cordoba juxtaposed with a Jaguar XJ of the era. Clearly, they got a little bit of inspiration from that. But in addition to those Jaguar-style headlights, the Ford also took inspiration from the Rolls-Royce grille, and you can clearly see that up front. Now, in the United States, Ford was also taking inspiration from Rolls-Royce with a couple vehicles, in particular the Lincoln Mark III and the Lincoln Mark IV. When Lincoln introduced the Mark III based on the four-door Thunderbird, it was alleged that Lee Iacocca effectively told Gene Bourdonnais and the design team that he wanted a Thunderbird with a Rolls-Royce grille on the front end. And despite the designer's
You love it. So get insurance that's a bit more U-shaped. Yui, you insured.
Introducing Gemini in Gmail, AI that thoughtfully summarizes conversations